Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel is now a year old. It's the 1-year anniversary of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, and yeah, this game is now a whole year old. It's a little hard to believe considering how much I and many others have played this game over the years since its initial launch. Whether you love this game or hate it, or both, this game has done so much for Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole and has played a huge role in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Fever that swept the world over and really brought us into the Yu-Gi-Oh! Renaissance, as a few people called it. This game has brought us much pain, but even more joy. Man, I will never forget the lead up to the launch of this game. From the initial announcement of the game, to the teaser, to the Nintendo Direct style video that Konami brought us accompanied with the full trailer, to the game just shadow dropping without a mention. I'll never forget it. I remember reacting to the initial presentation and trailer on stream, and I and everyone else in there were losing our minds at how promising and how good the game looked. What followed over the next few months was just sheer hype, and me just farming Duel Links and Omega to just hold me over until the game fully released. Fast forward to January of 2022, and I was at work when my phone starts buzzing up for messages from different people, all telling me the same thing. Reiji, the game dropped. The game is out now. At first, I didn't believe it from any of them, but then I snuck out back to log into my Steam account on my phone, and there it was. It dropped. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel was officially out. I remember absolutely racing home that day to see it for myself, and when I was finally able to sit down, play it, and stream it, I was just over the moon. The game and its presentation was just crazy good, and I just couldn't believe it. The engine and the strategy behind it. Oh my gosh, that summon animation is insane! What is this music? Why is this music so good? Why is this music so good? Chain? Dude, this chain stuff looks so cool. This chain graphic and the resolve effect looks so flippin' cool. Now, obviously, as we all knew or came to find out, the game was not perfect. It was still lacking in some areas and needed some work in a lot of places. I remember doing a video review on the game, giving my first thoughts and initial impressions, which is now pretty outdated, but I thought we could do another similar look and take a walk through a bit of the timeline of the game throughout its first year. The first thing that kinda caught everyone by surprise, and a good surprise at that, was how free to play the game was. So many people were able to build their favorite decks, except for me, because I couldn't get gems fast enough back then. But that was just the minor issue I personally had because I just wasn't earning gems as quickly as I had hoped. And there were not too many ways to earn gems consistently that didn't involve you using your forbidden card. Once I got over my initial gem problem after a while, the very first deck I built was Cyber's Code Talkers. This is my favorite deck in the game. And I don't just mean Master Duel, but in the TCG too. I played, grinded, and climbed with this deck so much until I got tired and forced myself to build something different. It wasn't even optimized or anything, I just wanted to play Cyberus and Code Talkers. Even though I had a slower start than most with deck building and couldn't see it at the time, the game did give you ways to build your favorite decks easily with how many gems it just threw at you on boot up. And the ability to just copy other decks from the deck searcher so you can build a template at least was a very neat feature. It's a very underrated feature that I feel is a little bit overlooked in the game. And the game had a huge card pool too. Now, the game didn't have every single card in the game at launch, with some very specific cards not being in the game, such as special promos, as well as some of the more recent booster expansions at the time, like Burst of Destiny and beyond. The game would release content updates to add these cards at a later time, and now currently, the game releases these content drops at a faster rate that it's almost all caught up with the TCG, which is great. Building decks was also made easy because of the crafting system. Crafting made it easier to just get the single cards you needed using your crafting points rather than having to dive into pack after pack in hopes that you pull the single card that you need. This feature was, and still is, absolutely amazing and is something that needs to be a standard in these types of card sims. I know that it's present in a couple other games now, which is good, and with additions like the Duel Pass, this was made even easier. Another amazing thing about the game which I feel has gotten even better over time is the solo mode and single player content. Master Duel does a great job at introing players to new and different archetypes that they may have never played or be familiar with. I stated this before in the past,
but there's actually so many archetypes and decks that I started building and playing after playing them in Master Duel. I never used to give a crap about my Akashi and Gear, but I freaking love these decks now. And now clearing these solo modes also nets you a nice amount of gems if you get through the whole branch. Beyond that, you had the shop, which at launch, you couldn't really get too much from there, but what you could was quite useful. The game had some essential bundle packs available that would come with some key staple cards to get you started off right. Cards like Ash Blossom, Solemn Judgment, and Lightning Storm were great pickups, as well as the game later adding a pack for both Forbidden Droplet and Infinite Impermanence. These are all great to see, and I always hope we would get a pack for Nibiru or something, cause that'd be kinda cool. I don't know, what are some cards and staples you guys think deserve an Essentials pack? I'd like to know. Besides that, the shop is where you find all your secret packs. You get more secret packs by just opening packs in general, so the more you open, the more you unlock. If you're after a specific pack with a specific archetype, you could just craft a super rare or ultra rare card from said archetype and it would unlock whatever pack they're from, which is a great way to narrow down and get what you need to get nice and quickly. Now, let's go over some of the unique and interesting things that happened with this game's life in its first year. Why don't we begin with the events? The Xyz Festival was the very first major event to take place in Master Duel. This event, as you guessed it and already know, was an event that allowed only Xyz monsters in your extra deck and nothing else. So, no fusion, no synchros, no pens, no links. So you better get ready to high five the sky because this event was something. I loved this event so much. It was the first time I experimented with something out of my zone, and my deck of choice was Gear. And this was when I made my very first Master Duel video on my experience with the event. I wanted to play Galaxy Eyes for this event, but I hadn't finished building the deck after all that time because I needed like 10 URs for that deck. But I thoroughly enjoyed the Xyz event and had an absolute blast during its time. Sometime during or right before the Xyz event, we were given the Rage of Cypher structure deck to purchase, which helped me a lot in getting a lot of my Galaxy pieces together, and was also a loaner deck for the event, which I opted not to use because I really just wanted to make my own. For those of you that still don't know, Galaxy Eyes are my absolute favorite archetype, not deck, in the whole game of Yu-Gi-Oh, because they are just so cool. So this was really cool to see. Now, moving on from the Xyz Festival, we would get an update that added more solo gates to the single player mode. We got the Weather Painter archetype gate added to the game, which was pretty neat. Fast forwarding some time ahead, and we will get our second event, this time in the form of the NR Festival, or the Rarity Festival. This event restricted players to using cards that were below super rare, so only normal and rare cards in your deck only, hence the NR Festival. This event was, it was alright. I didn't vibe with it the same way as the previous one, but I had some fun with it. I rocked with Earth Machines and gadgets for this event, which was extra fun because it introduced me to the Infinitrack archetype, which I would later make a full deck out of outside of the event. Now, throughout both of these events so far, despite all the restrictions and special custom ban lists they made for these events, there was one deck and archetype that stayed constant: True Dracos. This is a deck that focuses on sending spells and traps to the grave in order to activate effects on the field, such as destroying back row if it's a spell, and destroying monsters if it's a trap. And the monsters have their own set of effects that fuel this strategy. The best part, or worst depending on what side of the field you were on, was that this deck didn't have and didn't need any extra deck cards, and all their main deck cards were rare and commons, bringing every event to the point to be labeled the True Draco Festival, because that's a lot of what you would see. It was free gems, free real estate. I don't blame y'all for playing this deck, honestly. Get your bag. Fast forwarding from that again, we would get another update adding some more solo gates, this time giving us the Herald's Guidance, introducing us to the Herald's archetype. Moving into the month of April 2022, we would be introduced to our next major event, the Synchro Festival. My personal favorite event so far to this day, but also a lot of people's least favorite event. Out of all the events we had gotten so far, apparently people hated this event the most? Why? I never knew why. I love this event so much. It made me fall in love with what is now one of my favorite archetypes and decks in the game, Ice Barriers. Man, I love Ice Barriers so much. Everyone roasted me for playing him in my chat, but I love these guys. It was my deck of choice for this festival, and it was at this point that I started getting serious with my YouTube vids too. This was when I made my first video that I was actually really proud of. I literally did it in like one night, right after a ranked stream, and I put a lot of time into it the next day. It was the first Master Duel archetype video that I did, and the first video that I was genuinely proud of because I felt like I found a good formula going forward to make more of these types of vids, which I would later do. But back to the Synchro Fest, I wanted to play so many different decks. I wanted to build Stardust, I wanted to play Yusei Scrap Warriors decks, or even Jack's Red Dragon Master of Faster deck, which I found everyone was playing, so I decided against that. I landed on Ice Barriers because, well, no one was expecting it, and I grinded that event so much and won all of my gems. Thanks to the Synchro Festival, I am now the #1 and only Ice Barrier player on the planet. I'm kidding, by the way. Not really. I really hope to get this event back again at some point because I have a lot more decks that I want to try out. Moving on from Synchro, we would get a small but insignificant ban list which hit Eldritch, limited Tri-Brigade, and would unrestrict Red Eye's Darkness Metal Dragon for some reason. To move ahead of that, about a month later in the month of May, we would get a major selection pack added, the Refined Blade, a selection pack that would give us the long-awaited Burst of Destiny update, and with it, brought some issues. This major update would add the Sword Soul archetype, Punk, and would support fusion strategies such as Frightfur, Dual Avatar, and Heroes. It also brought us the absolute powerhouse, the hero of heroes and everyone's boss, Destroy Phoenix Enforcer. This card was instrumental in plunging us into the dark age of Master Duel, as a few people labeled it back then, where everything for a while was just DPE. DPE everywhere. Now, the coming of DPE was foreshadowed by the addition of the card Fusion Destiny, and people figured it out straight away. This card was a problem in itself already in the TCG, and now it had come to reign in Master Duel 2. They already had it all figured out, and DPE was a threat. Furthermore, we would also get our next event announced, which was the Fusion Festival. Oh boy, this event was a wreck. Why? Because DPE ruled the world. It felt like every deck, no matter what it was, always just ended on a board of DPE and all these other big Omni Negates, and it was just not fun. Not for me anyway. I don't know about y'all. I skipped this event after about 2 days of playing and said, yeah, nah, I'll sit this one out. Alongside this event, we got our next structure deck release in the form of Cybernetic Successor, which would essentially be the Cyber Dark Impact structure deck that we received in the TCG and pushed the Cyber Dragon strategy a little bit further. It was a nice inclusion. This was also the first event that I didn't decide to do a video for, unlike the last 2 events that came before. I had a video planned out and I had the deck that I wanted to play as well, but I just never went through with it because I just didn't end up participating in the event the way that I wanted to. I literally just spectated the madness because I didn't want to partake in the madness. This was a time. The meta wouldn't change going from the Fusion Fest either. Most boards would end on DPE, Baron de Fleur, and some other big Omni Negates and Destruction cards, and this is when my steam for the game would start to slow down a little. We would see our routine new solo gate added, this time in the form of Indomitable Warriors of Unwavering Loyalty, which gave us a look at the 6 Samurai archetype. The next selection pack to be added was the Valiant Wings, which would introduce the Exosister archetype into Master Duel, and we would also be given our next solo gate soon after for Worshippers of the Sacred Phoenix, which introed us to the Nephthys archetype. Okay, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit here and fly through the next updates. The next event we would get was the Limit 1 Festival, a festival which limited the amount of copies you're allowed to play of a single card to just 1 copy per card in your deck. I did not care for this event and completely skipped it. I didn't even play it. Following in the month of July, we would receive the Wandering Travelers Selection Pack, which brought us the Sue Ships, Magikey, Fluunderies, and the Adventure Engine added to the game, and this was another turning point of the Master Duel meta. Without going into too much detail, this era gave us access to the extremely useful adventure cards and would utilize the adventure token and its other spell cards to end on a board with Wandering Griffin Rider, which was the big Omni-Negate of the deck, as well as some other cards. I never really got too familiar with the Adventure Engine until quite recently. A fun time for sure, especially with everything else we already had access to. What made this even more dreadful to face was that it was so splashable in so many decks. Along with the selection pack, we would also get the Dragon Maid to Order, which was the latest structure deck focusing on the Dragon Maid archetype. I never got into Dragon Maids. It's a cool deck, but I just never got into it. We would also get some neat accessories like new fields, sleeves, and a new maid in the form of Laundry Dragon Maid. Fast forwarding, we would get the X0 event, an event which was centered around building a deck with no extra deck, hence the name X0. It was also the literal definition of the true Draco event, as they didn't get hit too much in the accompanying ban list, and they were still a problem in these events. Again, I didn't bother with this event. By now, my steam for Master Duel had really slowed down, as there were still a lot of issues that were still running rampant. The month of August would give us some much requested updates like a casual mode, which I was still firmly on the side of. It won't change anything and you still see problematic decks at play, but it was cool to be able to play the game without having ranked anxiety. It also adjusted some daily mission rewards and some other quality of life improvements. We would also get the Mech Knight storyline for solo mode. Invincible Raid would be the next major selection pack added, which gave us Dino Morpheus, B-Troopers, and added support for existing archetypes too. I'm a fan of the Dino Morphia archetype. I haven't had a chance to fully play the deck yet, but I'm very curious to go in on it. I just really like the aesthetic of them. The month of August would also give us our very first Duelist Cup event. If you've been around Duel Links for a while, this was essentially the Kyber Cup for Master Duel. I had a lot of fun with this event. Code Talkers were my deck of choice, and I enjoyed it a lot. August would also bring us a pretty notable ban list that would hit a few notable and problematic cards such as VFD, Vanity's Emptiness, number 75, Destiny Hero Celestial, and the other big one, Imperial Order, a card that had proved to be extremely problematic in the game. It would also limit Fusion Destiny, Crossout Designator, Pot of Prosperity, and Prank Kid's Meow Meow Moo. Skill Drain would also come to be semi-limited along with Fire Formation Tenki. This ban list was, to many, the first effective ban list. Following this, we would get the Newborn Dragon Selection Pack. This pack was the Battle of Chaos update and gave us the new Blue Eye support, Sword Soul support, and added Boro and Dragon. This was also the pack that would give us the contents of the Albaz Strike structure deck from the TCG, adding Mirror Jade, Lubellion, and some more Albaz support cards. A very good pack. Accompanying this, we would also get the Mermail storyline added to the solo gates. Following this, we would also receive the next structure deck in the form of Spellbook of Prophecy, which featured the Spellbook archetype, and we would also get our next major event, the Synchro Xyz Festival. Two dimensions collide. This would essentially combine both the Synchro and Xyz festivals that came individually before and combine them into one. Now, I never participated in this event. I didn't bother. I can't tell you why though, because this was the best of both worlds. I loved the Xyz Festival and I absolutely loved the Synchro Festival, but I just didn't care for this event, and I genuinely can't tell you why. I think I was really busy at the time and I just didn't get a lot of games in this event. Some more time would pass and we would get a new solo gate, which gave us the story of the Vendread archetype, an archetype that I fell in love with after some suggestions from my Twitch chat, and is an archetype that I really want to do a video on at some point. October hit and we got our new selection pack in Cosmic Ocean. I really like this pack. It gave us support for some water-based strategies such as Marincess, Ice Jade, and Sharks. Marincess is a deck that I really enjoyed playing before, and the new support from Duels from the Deep was great, so I was very happy about this addition. This was accompanied by the Burning Spirit structure deck, which was centered around Salamangreats, another cyber-centered deck that I need to check out soon because I planned on making vids for all the main character decks in Vrains, but I just got so busy at the time that I couldn't even make a start. But I'm still committed to the goal. By this point, Master Duel had established a good pattern of scheduled content releases, giving us a new selection pack accompanied with the neat new structure deck and at least one new solo mode gate introducing us to a different archetype. However, for me, it was around this time that I really started to slow down with the game and really took a step back. We would get the Link Regulation Duel event, which I think was supposed to be the Link Festival, but it had some elements attached to Duel Links. I'm not sure exactly what or how because I didn't play this event. By this point, I was out of the game for a bit, but I still kept up with all the new content updates. We got Dream Mirrors added to solo mode, and to fast forward a little bit more now, the game now has a few more modes available to play and try, like a new team battle mode, which I'm still yet to try and has given us a lot of new cosmetic stuff. The anti-spell event would follow after this, which I did not play, and currently at the time of making this video, the latest selection packs added and available are the beginning of Turmoil pack, a reprint pack which focuses on some of the strongest strategies like Sword Soul, Despia, and Ice Jade, selection pack Recollection of the Story, which focuses on archetypes from solo modes like Monarchs, B-Troopers, Ruin and Demise, Glad Beasts, and Yugioh, and is also a small callback to some of the more notable archetypes that were present at the game's launch. And also the most recent selection pack, Heroic Warriors, which has given us support cards for Vendreads and has finally added Libromancers and the Therian archetype to the game. We also now have the introduction of Mathmex to the game through the Singular Strike Overthrow secret pack, which also reprints some Sky Striker stuff. Okay, I know so far I've just explained the game's features, but why don't we dive a little bit deeper and take a look at some of the things and issues that this game faced over its first year. First of all, there was a lot of variety in the decks that you would see at the game's launch, which was great, but this would quickly take a turn and eventually ranked became a lot of the same thing, with top tier decks at the time just absolutely dominating. Decks like Drytron, Eldritch, and Virtual World were everywhere. Now obviously I'm not saying that this is the only thing that you saw. No, again, there was and still is a lot of variety in what you see in ranked now more than before at least. But I would have strings of duels where the only thing that I saw was Drytron for like an entire session. If it wasn't that, it was Eldritch. And boy, was that always fun. The game's card pool at launch wasn't fully up to date with the TCG, but it still had a lot to choose from. One of the first major updates, which added the Burst of Destiny cards, which as mentioned earlier, brought us the almighty Destroyer of Duels, Destroy Phoenix Enforcer, proved to be a growing problem. Seriously, this card, for those who had never played or faced it in the TCG, was a whole something. Now, other problematic cards like Verte and Hauki Vibrax would later become banned, to which they still are at the time of this video, and DPE has piped down a little bit ever since. There was also the era of bots. Bots were everywhere in this game for so long, and especially in the events where they would pop up in mass numbers. These bots would get into ranked games, and then they would just sit there and sit there until eventually they would just scoop the game. Now, I believe the purpose of these bots was to just farm gems to later sell off whole accounts on eBay, because that was a real thing apparently, and that is so wild to me. Bots were a major problem to the game, and Konami never addressed this ever, or at least I don't think they did. I never really saw a statement from them about it. These bots are no longer as big a problem as they used to be, but you might still run into the occasional one or two trying to steal your wins every now and then. Similar to some issues in the TCG, the biggest problem with the game became the lack of communication from Konami themselves. There were so many things that needed to be addressed, and when the fans would bring them up, Konami just never said anything, which was crazy to me because when the game was first released, they showed real signs of action in taking care of problems before they became larger problems, but over time, they would just kind of go dark and stop responding to issues as frequently as they used to. Currently, the game is in a good place in my opinion, and overall, I think this game has done absolutely amazing things for Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole, and has played a huge part in the big Yu-Gi-Oh! Boom that has swept the world over since the game was released. It's reignited and raised interest in the game again as a whole, has brought back many old fans of the game, as well as introduced a ton of new players to the game as well. And despite the many problems that it's had over its year, I love this game so much and everything that it's done for me and the larger community. It was the game that got me going with making content for both of my platforms. And even though it's been a while since I released one, I absolutely love making Master Duel archetype videos and introducing myself to new archetypes that I definitely did not plan on playing in the TCG ever. We've also seen so many cool new content creators pop up and come up because of this game, and heck, it's given me a chance to be able to create and share my passion for this game a little more. Actually, a lot more. And it offers a genuinely good and fun way to enjoy the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! At your own level of comfort. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a game that I recommend to absolutely everyone, and it's been a goal of mine since I started streaming to introduce many people to the game, and I feel like Master Duel helps with this a lot. Whether you're a casual or a competitive player, or you just want to learn the game properly, I feel like this game hits almost all the right notes in giving you the space to learn everything that you need to or want to at your own pace. Inclusions like casual mode, though I had my opinions on it at first, are great inclusions. After almost 3 months away from the game, I recently started playing it again, and man, this game is looking better than it has in a long time. If you still haven't tried the game for yourself or have been wanting to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! But don't know how to properly, please, I encourage you to play this game. It's completely free to play and won't cost you a cent to get started or even progress. Again, despite all of its flaws from before, I genuinely believe that this game is in one of its best spots currently since its release, and it's one of the best card sims out there to play, compared to some other ones anyway. Happy 1 year to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. I hope this game continues to thrive, and I'll see you guys very soon in the Duel Arena. Take care.